Hi, welcome to the Mohua show. My name is Mohua Chinnappa and I am an author, entrepreneur and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से. Hi, in this episode, we have with us Samir Soni. He's a multi-talented artist and he's left an indelible mark in acting, directing, writing, and even fashion modeling. So Samir Soni has enchanted audiences, which most of you know with his exuberant personality, and we are going to talk about the introvert in him today and how he's managed to touch the hearts of many through his creative endeavours. I'm one of them. But there's more to him that meets the eye. So today we are going to delve into the depths of his introspective nature as he shares his insights on happiness, the struggle between our inner and outer worlds, I think, which the entire world is struggling with, the transformative power of silence, and his latest book, My Experience with Silence, Diary of an Introvert. So Samir will offer a unique perspective on self-realization and tell us a little about his own journey of self-discovery. And so the first question that I need to ask you, Samir, first, welcome to the show. So your book, My Experience with Silence, Diary of an Introvert, delves into the concept of self-realization and the struggle between our inner and outer worlds, which so many of us really struggle with. What inspired you and what made you explore these themes? Because something must have happened to you for this entire space.
I guess kind of sparked it off was that I was kind of going through a personal and a professional crisis. And like anybody else, I was talking to people, reading self-help books, and the word that jumped up to me was the word silence, that everyone, regardless, whether it's a Deepak Chopra or any other book, they would talk about trying to maintain silence. And I was like, okay, let's try this out. Let's see where it takes us. So that was what was the seed that was, sown. As I started pretty much by, consciously being quiet for, say, half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the night, which really meant that you did nothing. You did not read, you did not, watch TV. You just sat in front of a clock and just waited half an hour to get over. And then gradually I started increasing that, and then it reached a point it became pretty profound. Then I have had quite a few epiphanies in that phase, because I think we lead a life which is very reactionary. We are constantly reacting to the environment around us, people, place, situation. That's somewhere you kind of lose yourself. And that's what I eventually got out of it. So it was just sort of as an experiment. And also I'm predisposed to be a very quiet person. I enjoy my own company. So that's how the whole thing started. And then it actually took a form of a book, I guess.
And how long do you sit now? I mean, you said you began with 30 minutes, because this is for also our listeners who are probably struggling. And I'm one person who's really trying to figure out and turn my loneliness into solitude, which is a really difficult journey. And so if I were to start, and some of my listeners were to start, so you start with 30 minutes by sitting absolutely quiet. And would you recommend this early in the morning or at night?
Look, I'm a firm believer that, whatever floats your boat, whatever works for you. If you don't want to practice it, that's fine too, whatever, really. It's all about knowing yourself, what works for you, being in touch with yourself. Some people are not comfortable with that. Some people constantly need company to run away. Which I guess, if it works for you, the bottom line is like the proof of the pudding is in the eating of it. So what I was doing is my only outlet was journaling. So whatever I was experiencing, the only thing I would allow myself was to write. So, I tried, for example, I gave you that first time I tried and I was quiet for half an hour, man, that half an hour felt like a lifetime, because you're not doing anything, you're just waiting, looking at the clock. And when you're quiet, one would notice that there's a billion more thoughts that go through your mind. Your mind is saying this, your mind is saying, oh, yesterday this happened, or tomorrow this will happen, I hope this happened, da, da, da. But if you hang in there and you hang in there, you hang in there, I mean, like I'd play games with myself that, I will not talk unless somebody calls me up. I will not call anyone up. Obviously, that this is the time when I wasn't on the set. On the set, I don't have a choice, but when I'm on my own, and silence becomes extremely profound. And I remember that it becomes so profound that it's almost deafening. I mean, you can actually hear the sound, even of the AC or the fan. And so to anyone, it's just try it out. Just be quiet. Just learn to. I think there's a saying by an Austrian philosopher called Franz Kafka, who basically said that you don't have to do anything. Just sit at the table and write. You don't even have to write. Just sit at the table. You don't even have to listen. Just learn to be quiet. And strange things happen to you because you're actually getting in touch with yourself, number one. Number two, very often we are governed on dictated terms by what our mind thinks is right. And the basic purpose of your brain is to protect you, right? So your brain will go through the history and say, oh, look, this is all the bad thing that's happened to you. We have to do whatever we can not to make sure they happen again in future. But that's a job of the brain to protect you, but your brain will not give you happiness, right? Just because something has happened in the past does not mean it will happen again. So brain is a very tricky thing. And this is the exercise of silence is more kind of telling your brain or your mind that you are a part of me and I'm not ruled by you. I mean, your mind or your brain is not very different from, say, your hand or your nose or your ears. It's just, a part of you. But today's day and age, we kind of feel that the mind is you. So what tends to happen is that for those who haven't tried it, once you're quiet, you'll have a gazillion thoughts. But when you don't react upon the thoughts, that's where silence comes in. You don't react on the thoughts, the rate of the thoughts slow down. They're not that many thoughts. And then you find intervals between the thoughts. And that's where you really get rejuvenated. You feel like, wow, I feel good. This is just a practice you should do. And right now, I don't consciously do it. It's sort of become a part of me. I kind of carry it with me. So if I'm even in a crowded place, I can just sit and be quiet and be okay with it. So it's just, it's a little practice you do. Now, whether you call it because a lot of people talk about meditation and stuff and they focus on this and focus on that. And to me, meditation is nothing but reaching a state of thoughtlessness in which there's nothing transpiring in the mind. Your mind is absolutely blank. It's not saying anything. And I think the practice of silence kind of does that because your brain kind of gives up. Otherwise, your brain is a constant worrier. Your brain's going to say, oh, this could happen and that could happen. And it's constantly taking you from past to present to future. So, this is what I learned. And to me, for example, if I had an urge to say, speak to a friend, I would say, okay, I'm going to wait for the urge to go away and then I'll call. So you're not a slave of your mind, don't get me wrong, mind is an extremely important part of your body and plays a great role in survival, but that is not you. There's more to you. It is a part of you, has a purpose in life.
Oh, this is amazing. I mean, because you said something that I think so many of our listeners would resonate with, because the minute we are angry, we're disappointed, we really regret because, you make that phone call, you just write that message and you don't let that thought. Most of us are so impulsive. And I will be taking this with me because, I will hold this so close to my heart from today that I will wait for that thought to pass, and only then I will articulate my my thoughts on a WhatsApp message or on a phone call. So, I need to talk to you a little bit about discovering our true selves, where your book suggests that until we discover our true selves, we're merely living someone else's life, fulfilling somebody else's dreams. So can you elaborate on this idea and explain how societal pressures influence our sense of identity, and one can't get away from it because, we are all, like you also mentioned in your book about the monkey mind, and we are eventually mirroring what people are expecting out of us. So how does one get out of this?
First thing is to understand and acknowledge it, that what the value system that you hold, the good and bad, the right and wrong, the desirable and the undesirable are really not your choices. This is what you were trained by your society, or more importantly, your family when you were growing up. I mean, they say your personality is pretty much formed by the time you're 7 or 8, your personality is formed. And then you use that blueprint. For example, your first relationship is going to be with your parents, and you figure out, if I'm nice to my mom and dad, I get what I want. Or if I'm quiet to mom and dad, I get what I want. And that's a blueprint you have. Or in some cases, there's a bad experiences that your parents might promise you something and they don't deliver that. And then you start doubting people and you say, I can't trust people, right? Or if you've had an experience in which you were emotional and you were crying and you did not get that kind of, love and affection at that point in time. So you kind of tell yourself, there's no point, expressing your love and affection is better. So you start mistrusting people. And that becomes your blueprint. And you work along, with that blueprint in your mind, you work through life with that blueprint. And it works for a long time because, you practice it enough with your parents, you practice it with your friends and family. To avoid disappointment, you lower your expectations, and you go through life like that until you reach a point and think, hey, this is not working anymore because, yes, it is keeping me away from being hurt, but it's not really making me happy. I mean, for example, I can take a personal example that I question myself, why did I choose to be an actor? What was it about acting that drew me, right? And very often you find that the reason you're doing it is for validation, right? There's nothing intrinsic great about what you're doing, apart from the fact because you do it well, you get validation and you feel good about yourself. So the source is feeling good about yourself, maybe because you didn't feel good about yourself as a child. So first is to acknowledge that. I mean, I talk about that, about, for example, when you talk about some of the legends in the world in their own respective fields, might be artists or singers or actors, and we all look up to them. If you talk about musicians, you have Michael Jackson and Elvis, and art, you might have Mozart, a musician Mozart, or you might have, Vincent van Gogh and stuff. And these are the people we admire, right? We want to be as successful as them or as great as them. And we feel that is the answer to our question, because that is the map we had when you were growing up, that if you came first in class, you were validated by your parents and your society. And you say, oh, wow, I'm good, right? So it wasn't the fact that you felt good coming first in class, it's because the reaction you got out of people when you came first in class. But if you were to look at the lives of these super great legends who, achieved so much, I don't think any one of us would want to trade places with them. I don't think one of us would want the life, say, Michael Jackson had. I mean, no doubt he was, did some fantastic work, but as a person, as a life he led was a tragic life. Likewise, if you look at Mozart, he died at the age of 30-something. You even look at Steve Jobs, the richest man, successful people. He was fairly miserable when he died. And so the list is endless. So we live in a society which tells you, if you do this, it's great. And we assume that's great. It's like, if you grew up in a society and said, hey, whoever climbs Mount Everest is the coolest and the smartest and the best. But maybe you spent an entire life trying to climb Mount Everest. So once you reach Mount Everest, you don't like the view. So what a waste of life that is. So I think it's for you to determine that why you are doing what you're doing. What is the reason?
So Samir, you're in the entertainment industry. How difficult is it for you to navigate, in a surrounding where everybody's talking glamour, business, going ahead? Where did this leave you with? And, did friendships fall off? Did you have difficulty in relating to people? Because, when the minute you touch on a certain empowering inner voice, the external world starts to fall apart all around you. And that can be a very, very difficult journey. So how did you navigate this?
I mean, it's an ongoing battle. I mean, it's all a balancing act, that you might feel a certain way, but you live in a society which you can't ignore. You're not an island by yourself, right? So it's a constant balancing act that, okay, fine, I don't need to, but I'm doing it. But I don't buy into what people say. That's the difference, right? For example, if someone calls you for dinner and stuff like that, then you kind of take an approach that if I don't go there, they might feel bad. But you don't need to go to dinner to get validated. So the motivation becomes very different. I mean, I was just watching on Insta, there's some person put up photographer of this, some actress, they didn't show her face, who's getting out of a Range Rover and said, oh, any guesses who this girl is? And my instinctive reaction is, who cares? What the bloody hell cares, really? Does that affect my life in any way? No, it does not. Yeah, it's like the matrix, the blue pill and the red pill. You see things for what they are. Now, how much you want to act upon it, it's up to you. But at least it's not a compulsive thing, right? To be, say, have pictures or hang out with so-and-so, successful people. Initially, you might feel that as a sign of success and validation. But when you've kind of gone through and, you just say, look, I respect these people for they've achieved, but that's about it. I mean, it's not going to do anything for me. So I think the clarity kind of takes a lot of pressure off you. And for example, a simple thing is that growing up, we were told to come first, right? And
Yes.
to get a good job, get a good college education.
Oh dear,
get a good,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Now, what is the intrinsic value of that? We all have gone through this. And the answer is very simple, that the generation before us did not have access to good education, did not have access to good jobs, whether they were financial, because they were earlier generation who were trying to make ends meet.
Absolutely.
Right? So they imparted on us what the value system that they learned. They realized, hey man, whether I like it or not, we need to have security. Our son or daughter needs to go to a good college and this and that, so he can have a good life and da da da. That's what they thought, because they were trying to make ends meet. But we live in a different era. Most people in this world already have that covered. They don't need to work to make ends meet. What we are searching for is, purpose of life, meaning of life, happiness. So you cannot apply their plan of how to go through your life with your life, because your life is different. They were probably born in relatively, I shouldn't say poverty, but inadequacies, insufficient resources. But our generation is privileged. We have, most of the things that we need. So to use that as a blueprint, it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. And that's why you will see cases of stress, depression, anxiety, um, suicides, and all those things. So sooner or later, you have to ask yourself what is important for you. I mean, money beyond a point is not going to do anything for you. Name, fame beyond a point will not do anything for you. And if you want to look around, there are enough cases. I mean, like you have someone like Robin Williams who commits suicide, is one of the most successful comedians ever.
Yeah, seriously, it's unbelievable.
But unfortunately, can't blame the parents because they do what they know best. But it's for us to discover what we truly want. Because right now, we are like this blind robots who've been programmed to do a certain thing because they've been told that's the thing to do. And no one has the courage to step back and say, hey, wait a minute. Do I really want it? Maybe you do. If you do, that's fantastic. I'm not the kind to say that there's anything wrong in being rich and famous. Fine. But will that being rich and famous or whatever give you what you're looking for? I question that. I mean, it need not necessarily be true. If that was the case, every rich person and famous person would not have a shrink or a psychiatrist or have drug problems or something else. Evidently, that doesn't fulfill you. So the why is extremely important. Why do I do what I do? What is it about it that draws me? If in the end you're looking for validation, then you're in trouble because you'll never get that.
Absolutely true. You've also discussed this constant struggle between hope and despair, right? So how have you personally managed to maintain hope, because there's been such challenging times. There was COVID, we were cut off from so many people, and I think people have emerged very different after COVID, and interpersonal relationships have changed and people have learned to become more comfortable alone at home, and that alone is not solitude, it can be loneliness, not being able to forge relationships with the outside world. So, what role does hope play, in the pursuit of happiness, which actually your entire book talks about, that one thing to pursue where you need to have this self-realization of our lives, yeah.
You talked about hope and loneliness. Loneliness is really, you think about it, what is loneliness? Loneliness is when you're not happy with your own company. It's as simple as that.
But how does one become happy with one's company, Samir?
It's again spending time with yourself. You would be surprised that, when like I said, when we talk about silent stuff, it's not that you don't need people, but it is not that, it is on the other hand, you're not dependent. So it's like, okay, I'm alone. Yeah, I wish I had people around, but this is not that terrible either, right? There's a difference between wanting something desperately and not being able to be on your own. One is I'm comfortable being on my own, but if other people join me, more the merrier. That's exactly what loneliness is. There's nothing else to it. It's your inability to be okay with your own thoughts. There's a saying that you speak when you're not comfortable with your own thoughts. Because what happens is when you're alone, all your negative thoughts will come out. Your thoughts will come out, oh, what if this happens and what if this doesn't happen? And you can't deal with that. Or you'll have thoughts, oh, this is a beautiful thought. I have nothing to share, no one to share it with, right?
Yes.
So to me, writing was a big tool and still is, because at the end of the day, I don't think anyone can solve your problems. You know what the problem is. You know what the solution is. At best, someone can distract you for some time. Right? One little phone call here, one going down to the local pub or whatever. For that half an hour, 1 hour, you have forgotten your problems. But they haven't gone away. So the thing of understanding loneliness is that you're not comfortable with your own thoughts. And to me is that when you write and you spend time on your own, then you realize, what's the big deal? If you're feeling lonely today, doesn't mean you're going to feel lonely tomorrow or day after. It's that moment, right? And the fact of the matter is that when you're comfortable being alone or lonely with your thoughts, then you make the right decision. You don't, for example, in a relationship, a lot of people can talk about being alone and stuff like that. But if from that point of view, you're looking for a partner, you will make a mistake. but you will try to fill that void by whoever comes along, right?
This message is going out to all our listeners because so many people I meet and I talk to are really struggling in their relationships. So thank you so much for sharing this, Samir, because so many of us, we are worried about being lonely, and you start saying yes to that next person who comes along, and it's never, ever complete, ever. And then one moves from one relationship to the other. My goodness, thank you.
The example is, I mean, if you look around with a lot of people who've been in long relationships, have been married, and they will look at their single friends with envy. So, I mean, everything is going to come with its own set of problems. If you learn to see what is the good points and the advantages of being alone, you're not going to feel that lonely. You might feel blessed that I can pack my bags anytime I want to go somewhere else. But it is that fear. It's that fear. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh my God, what is this? Oh my, I wish this. And this is nothing but your mind talking to you. You have to remember this. These thoughts are your mind playing games on you, because the job of the mind is to protect you. The job of the mind is, oh no, this is too lonely. Come on, let's get out of it. Right? The moment you're alone, you'll feel sad. What is your mind going to say? Hey man, let's do this. As opposed to sitting through it and saying, hey man, okay, I'm sad. All right, I'll sit with it for half an hour. Let's see what happens. Chances are, this is my experience, whatever that emotion is, it passes away. It's not there. I mean, that urgency. So in effect, you are not a slave to your thoughts. You're not slave to your habits and instincts. So that's as far as loneliness is concerned, because when you talk about loneliness, I wish I was there with someone who would be holding my hand, or would be watching this, watching that. What is that? Isn't that your mind playing tricks? Because you don't feel like that all the time. Probably in the evening you'll be more than happy. Okay, fine, I need to go to the gym. So if there was something so intrinsically great about it, you'd feel like that all the time. But no, one day you'll be glad that you meet a friend who's had a fight and stuff. So thank God, I'm single. Shit, who wants to deal with this? On the other hand, I want to be holding hands, and I wish I had someone who's going to be doing this, and someone da. Yeah, that's like Mills and Bones stuff, right? So, like I said, if you're comfortable in your own skin, in your own thoughts, you're okay. Your brain's going to give up. And he's going to say, okay, man, this guy's stubborn. I can't push him anywhere. He will do what he wants to do. If you can't stand your own company, just imagine how boring you must be for other people.
Thank you so much, Samir. This really cracked me up, This is one of the most fun interviews I've had, because you look like the most Mills and Bones sort of a hero who's like totally debunking this entire thought of romance. And this was Samir Soni for all our listeners, and his book, My Experience with Silence, Diary of an Introvert. Thank you so much, Samir, for being on today's show, and we look forward to having more conversations with you about life, self-discovery, and pursuit of happiness. Thank you so much. To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are The Mohua Show, where we talk ईमानदारी से.